Hey, David.
Hi there. Just a second. I didn't realize. Wow. Okay. Welcome, everybody. There.
Welcome to FujiCam. Oh, there we go.
You know, it's a great camera, but the software is really slow.
Chris, you have your hand up already?
Oh, no, I was just trying to wave.
Hey folks, sorry for the delay.
No problem, and welcome.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm fighting something this morning, so it's kind of a rough night. So I have to excuse my low energy.
We're grateful you could do this in spite of that, so thank you.
Thanks.
Hope you get better quick.
Oh, thank you. Let's get the meeting notes here. All right, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Crow, for the enthusiastic yes.
It never hurts to help.
Appreciate it. Okay. All right, so I think we got pretty much quite the crowd this morning, so let's go ahead and get started. Main thing for election process update, we are still in need of the election officials. If anyone on this call would like to volunteer to be an election official, myself, I am happy to go ahead and volunteer and be one of them, but I believe we need 2 more.
What's the criteria for those again? I imagine it can't be TAC members, can it? But then if you're on there.
We had listed that the person cannot be running for the TAC
I see, okay.
in the next election, but they needed to be an eligible candidate. So basically, they need a member of OpenSSF essentially is what it comes down to.
I mean, if you're willing to also allow staff, I'd be happy to help, but I'm not eligible, so.
And a clarification, that was eligible to vote, not necessarily eligible to run, in case that distinction matters to anyone.
Okay. With that clarification.
If you are an eligible voter and would like to help, then yeah.
Okay. I don't know exactly what the role, well, we've talked about it, but I've never done the role, but I'm happy to help. So there's 2, if that's acceptable.
Personally, I'm fine with it. I'm curious to hear what the rest of
I mean,
folks think.
if somebody objects, please do. I mean, I'm trying to be helpful, not cause problems.
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. Do we have a third? Anybody that would care to volunteer? I think the effort required is actually quite minimal. It's mostly vetting of the candidates to make sure that they've actually participated in OpenSSF, which I think is going to be fairly straightforward. But
yeah, this is Steve from JFrog. I'd be happy to volunteer and help out with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Is anyone opposed to the 3 candidate election officials, myself and David and Steve? All right, we will make it official, and thank you, David, for typing those up. So we did have the candidate timeline as far as election officials was last Friday, which is the 10th, and then we were supposed to solidify them today, so we'll call that good. The next step is for the announcement of the self-nomination of candidates. So I don't know if Jory, are you on the line?
I am. Hi, everyone. So we had talked about getting these forms together, but then also maybe pushing the process to January in order to make sure that nobody missed opportunities over the holidays. As everyone is aware, we're going to be, lots of folks will be stepping out over the next couple of weeks. So I think timeline and forms are tightly connected. I do need to say out loud that in January, I will not be here due to delivery of a baby. So that will be Jen Bonner who will be taking over for me on the forms front, but we'll make sure she's got everything she needs.
Yeah, congratulations or pre-congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Congratulations. So in terms of forums, I think we talked about, like, everything said, absolutely agree. Yeah, that's what we were talking about as far as not wanting anyone to miss out. We did say we wanted to go ahead and initiate it now so that we could have this timeline for people to go ahead and prepare if they're available, but then also have the timeline be in January. So is that something we could get kind of up and running currently?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Well, so once you have that ready, can you guys also send the mail, or do you want me to send the mail with the link to the forums, or how would you like to process that?
Why don't you let the staff can send it out, and just also, and then direct anyone who may have questions, obviously, or be curious about their eligibility to you all election officials, and then we can answer questions about the process if there's questions about, like, how does voting work and things of that sort.
Okay, that sounds good. I think that wraps up our election process update, unless folks have any questions.
Just one more thing I wanted to add, which was, there was some question as to whether we wanted to revisit the number of candidates, or the size of the TSC and how they're elected by the public, contributors, I should say, versus the governing board. I did not get a strong sentiment on the side of the governing board that they wanted to change what had been agreed to previously, which was 3 elected by contributors and 4 appointed by the governing board. So I think at this point we should probably stick with that balance that was struck before, rather than revisit that at this time. We can revisit that at the next election cycle or some other point. Is that comport with everyone else's kind of understanding or thinking? And if that's the case, then we'll follow up the contributor-based election with a governing board election for those 4 appointed by the governing board.
Okay, so given that there was a concern, I think, around, we had a typo around how many seats were the governing board and how many were community. Our note specified that there was 4 community, 3 governing board, but what got into the official documentation was the inverse of that. So do we need to update that with the governing board, or how should we proceed as far as that goes?
Right. Well, what was pointed out was that what was in the charter that everyone had signed up to was 4 from the governing board and 3 from the community. Is that different than how people who were here before most of us showed up who were part of the discussions earlier, which I want to respect where those went. was the sentiment then that the majority, that 4 were elected by the contributors.
Yeah, I think when we went back and looked at the notes, the actual intent was 4 community, 3 governing board. But what ended up in the charter was the inverse of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
Well, are we even going to keep it that at all?
Yeah.
That's the other question.
Right. Well, and I was trying to close that issue by getting to agreement. Obviously, we want to honor what had been agreed to previously. So we'll take this and come back then. My understanding was that 4 governing board, 3 community was what both was in the charter and what had been agreed to earlier. So and that I know there was some question about that inverse, but I thought those folks misremembering the compromise. So okay, let us go back, look at notes, try to reconstruct this, and then come back as soon as we can with it.
Yeah, I think we did look at the notes, and the notes do reflect within the TAC at least, as far as having 4 community and 3 governing board.
Okay.
So in either case, there's a split. So we need to figure out how we actually want to run that process from the governing board side. I think from the community side, we decided it's self-nomination and all that, but from the governing board side, how do we want to handle that? Whether it's 4 or 3.
So just for my 2 cents, and this is by no means a reflection of the overall governing board. My recollection, at least in the last meeting, was I thought we were talking about 4 elected community and 3 governing board. The inverse sounds heavily weighted in the wrong direction in my humble opinion, but that's by no means a general governing board sentiment, just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think the primary issue here is that it actually got written into the charter incorrectly. So that's what we need to rectify.
Yeah, that let us go back and look at that. The second question now, which was about the process, it seems logical that the governing board would appoint after the community elects, rather than having them happen at the same time. It also seems logical that it be the same pool of candidates that the governing board picks from. But let us go back with a proposal on that.
Okay, sounds good. So in the meantime, we'll just go ahead and work through the process as far as self-nomination for the seats that we believe to be available, whether it's 3 or 4, but we can get the candidates going at least in the meantime, and then we can sort that out asynchronously. So.
Yep.
Ryan, there are people waiting in the queue to join.
Oh, I do not
see them either.
They have already been added. Yes.
David, do you want to make myself and Jen co-hosts so we can help?
Oh,
with
absolutely. Yeah, I'm surprised you weren't already.
Oh, there we go. Yep. Awesome. Okay, so the next items on the agenda today is we have 2 presentations. I'm totally going to mispronounce this. One is, I believe, is it Pirja?
Yeah, so we're going with Persia as the pronunciation, but I'm happy to be corrected by somebody who's better in ancient Greek than me.
I'll let you handle it. So, Stephen, do you want to go ahead and do you have something to present, or do you want to talk through it? Or
yeah. So let me just talk through it quickly. I think that's probably better than going through a presentation with the folks on here. And I'm going to put in chat, in case you missed it in the email, a link to the document. So we did a short presentation at Linux Foundation Member Summit on the project. At a very high level, what we're proposing is building a distributed package repository that would allow you to get artifacts, whether they're Docker images or NPM modules or Go modules or Java jars or other things, in a highly reliable way, and also in a with the confidence that what you're downloading is of high security as well. either as peer verified or certified by partners in the network. And I think some of the goals of the project and the reason why we're discussing it here is we want this project to be very transparent in how it's both conducted and also in the visibility of folks in the community to what's going on in the project. The second thing is we want the project to be neutral, both in terms of the vendors participating in it and the infrastructure and the ownership of the project. So having it be part of a neutral body like OpenSSF is important to us. We believe in both the success of the project and also keeping it to a high standard. And the last one is we highly value inclusion. So we want this to be a project which is inclusive of different language communities, of different contributors, and something which can be a big asset and support the open source community. The companies which are jointly proposing this right now, and we're of course welcome to others, are JFrog. So we're committed to both developing the solution and helping to see it be a success. Our friends at Docker. So we have Chris, who's joining us today, and they've been helping us out both with recommendations on the best way to integrate with the cloud native ecosystem and other standards which you should be looking at, like Notary 2. And our friends at Deploy Hub. So Steve and Tracy are both on the call as well, and they're both helping us out in the project, and also they're soon to become OpenSSF members. So I believe, maybe even like this week, I think they're slated to be officially joining OpenSSF as a member.
Yeah, we're planning to get our paperwork signed on Thursday.
Cool. And I think what we're looking at is, we're in the early stages of the project. We have a public Git repo where we have a bunch of developments and have done some initial prototypes with Docker integration with the help of the folks at Docker. But we would like to have this be done in the open, to have this be done under as an incubating project at OpenSSF. And as we grow the network and actually have an MVP, which companies like us and other folks can run, we also think it's important to have some support from OpenSSF in the form of a fund where we can both run some of the infrastructure within the Linux Foundation to make sure that there is a kind of a neutral instance of it running as well, besides the vendor run instances. But also provide the right sort of funding to support the growth of the ecosystem. Yeah. So first of all, any kind of I give a super high level description of the project and kind of what our goals are. But any questions from the TAC members that you have about kind of the project, or we're looking for an open to guidance on the project as well. So we want this to be something which fits in with the overall goals of the OpenSSF ecosystem, and is something which we can kind of have interoperate with other projects and ongoing work happening within this group.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to ask, could you just sort of spell out the ask for me a bit more again? So is this around the infrastructure needed to run the project, or more collaboration?
Yeah, so I think the main ask is we want to take the project which we've kicked off and have it be an incubating project under the OpenSSF banner, contributed by a couple of us member companies. And then I think the second level ask, this isn't an ask for the TAC, but in the future, I think this is something we'd be looking at from the governing board, is once we have a project and we have an MVP, which we can actually run on infrastructure, it would be to get a a directed fund that we could use to support the expansion of infrastructure. So we'd want companies such as ourselves, Docker, maybe some of the cloud providers to run instances of their own. But in addition to that, we think it's important to have OpenSSF running an official instance as well, and supporting maybe smaller players who want to run instances and don't have the financial means to do so. Does that make sense, Luke?
It does, yeah. So would these be, so I had a quick look at the code. Would these be IPFS nodes? Is that right?
So we
kind of a hybrid.
Yeah. Currently, we're using P2Plib, which is the underlying infrastructure for IPFS. We're not directly using IPFS for the metadata layer right now. And I think the way of thinking about this is there's some specific attributes to package systems and like interoperability with package management systems, which we're focused on solving, which that's kind of the layer we're building on top of this. And this is kind of, you can think of it as a content delivery network for packages of different types, with the goal being that we would have first-class integrations with, over time, with the majority of languages and tools that developers and folks are using to build an ecosystem. And I saw someone with their hand up. Was it Jen?
I think it was Jennifer, yeah.
Jennifer?
Yes, I took my hand back down because I think I need to read the proposal more. I'm just trying to understand kind of the threat model assumptions for this, and just kind of to do my own due diligence around understanding exactly how we ensure integrity of the packages and I don't know, the overall security of the ecosystem. But then I realized maybe I need to do some reading and come back to you. So
yeah, no, thanks, Jennifer. And actually that's a good kind of like discussion of what we're expecting. So we wanted to introduce it to the TAC at the meeting today, just to get the idea out there and start the conversation. We didn't actually want to get this to a decision. And what we're looking for is feedback, comments, kind of like the some help with the path forward to navigate how we best turn this into a project which would align well with the OpenSSF goals.
All right, thank you for that clarification. So are you intending to present this anywhere, or is there somewhere we can get more information? And again, it might all be in the document and I just have to do my homework.
Yeah, so the document covers a lot of information, although if there are areas which aren't clear, feel free to comment and we're willing to clarify. We did a presentation at the Linux Foundation Member Summit. I believe there's a link in the document to that as well.
Oh, perfect.
So that might be helpful. And I mean, myself and Sudhindra and other folks on the project are more than happy to clarify either in the document on the mailing list, or even set up a meeting to discuss it in more detail if folks are interested to kind of geek out with us. So I think it's exciting, but again, the reason why we're proposing it at such an early stage is we want to be transparent about where we're going with it. We want to be inclusive and make sure that we're also considering other efforts in the ecosystem and helping out to secure open source while not we don't want to compete with other efforts. We want to rather reuse existing authentication systems, make sure we're integrating with other efforts for reproducible builds, and make sure that we're kind of aligning with where things are going.
Hey, this is Sudhindra. I don't think we had the link, but I put it up on the top of the page so that you can easily find the presentation.
Oh, thanks, Sudhindra. Okay, cool. So if there are any other questions, I think that's the main thing we want to do, is just to kind of introduce the project and start getting some feedback. If folks can give us comments and feedback, feel free to reach out to myself directly as well. And I think what we look for is maybe in a January meeting, after we've gotten more feedback from members and more input, to see if we could move towards becoming an official OpenSSF project.
Yeah, so I think there's two questions here really. There's the what do TAC members think about the general alignment of this project with OpenSSF, and if we all agree that yeah, this kind of fits with the overall technical vision, and which it seems like this kind of fits within the general supply chain security type space, as one element of that. But definitely want to hear others' thoughts on that. But if it does fit, then there's the question of the formality of making it a project of, do you have multiple companies? Are you holding that are interested in participating? Are you holding regular meetings, right? We have this official process for making it an incubating project within OpenSSF. So we'll need to, go through that. But before we do that, do folks have any objections to this being within OpenSSF? Are there questions, concerns? I think in the meantime, asynchronously, you should start holding these meetings and that sort of thing, so that, a lot of this can get clarified. But Justin, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've spoken to a bunch of customers and I've never had someone ask for distributed package management. Usually when I talk to folks, they say they want control over it. They'll say, I want my private registry where I know every bit that's on there and how they got there. I've never had someone ask for less control or less visibility over like where the stuff lives. And so I just kind of wonder, are people going to be comfortable with this, even if there's crypto and, verifiability and all that? I know a lot of enterprises that still aren't comfortable with the cloud. Like, I'm not sure how comfy folks are going to be with this.
Yeah, so I think part of what you're probably getting to, Justin, and let me answer it partially, but it may be a longer discussion than we want to do here, is it's a question of kind of the audience and who the consumer of this is. So I think at JFrog as a company, we both deal a lot with large enterprises, DevOps teams, and kind of what they need to secure the pipeline. And we also, because we historically ran a bunch of central repositories, we're still running Conan Center, which supports the C and C++ community. We're also very familiar with developer needs and kind of like how individual developers look at the supply chain and the tooling which connects to it. And I think the goal of this project is really to target specifically developers, folks who are building software which relies on open source projects, and making the tooling, the accessibility, the uptime, and the security of the network as high as possible, and also to make it sustainable. I think one of the challenges in the developer ecosystem is we have a lot of different tools, package management systems, central repositories, and they're at varying levels of maturity, reliability, and simple things like malware or a DDoS on, for example, PyPy. Not picking on Python as a language, but that disrupts a huge portion of the developer ecosystem and a surprising number of commercial CI/CD systems which shouldn't be reliant on central repositories, but often are. So we see this happen quite a bit with our customers, and I think the goal of this project is to solve the problem upstream and specifically solve a pain point which developers experience around managing those kind of upstream dependencies securely. Luke, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. So you don't have to answer this now. I realize you're in the early stages of developing the project. I've worked with lib P2P before, played around with this with a sort of a similar use case in mind. One of the hurdles that was a real challenge to overcome, and something you might want to explore at some point, is with lib P2P, you can't delete content. So if you're using it as a CDN, then there's no means to actually remove content. and you can sometimes implement some sort of gateway effectively, but then it's no longer decentralized. So this was just one of the issues that I ran into. That might actually be resolvable now. There might be an approach for that, but it's probably something to be mindful of if
Yeah, no,
packages in there that have got perhaps images, proprietary codecs, any
yeah,
sort
this
of
actually is one of the conversations that came up in architecture and design, because for the reasons you mentioned, like either folks accidentally publishing proprietary code or artifacts, or simply government regulations around the ability to redact code or things
illegal content as well.
Exactly. You do need a way to remove items from the network for legal reasons. And so even though we were proposing a distributed and mostly decentralized network, you'll notice in the proposal there's a concept of certified nodes. And part of the reason for that is we do need a way to both handle cases like that where we need to have we need to either remove things from the network, or we need to verify things which are not reproducible, or we need to prevent things like attempts to do a majority takeover of the network. So there's different scenarios which we're not trying to solve everything in a pure decentralized approach. We're kind of recognizing that we want to make this as secure as possible, with the support of companies who are basically good-natured, who want to see this be successful.
Sure, understood.
Okay, so yeah, those were excellent questions. I think we'd appreciate, the feedback, comments on the document, and I think, rather than trying to push it in this meeting, I'd like to, if you're fine with it, Ryan, take it up in the future OpenSSF meeting once we've gotten some more feedback on the proposal to look at next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next approach is to just go ahead, start hosting meetings, try to get some involvement, resolve some of these questions that we have. And then once you've kind of reached the quote definition of incubating, then resubmit to the TAC, and we'll kind of vet it from there. But yeah, it sounds like go ahead.
Hi Ryan, I had a question. You mentioned that we should have these meetings. How would you like to see it documented? Because we are already having these meetings
I think,
as part of just our development.
I think what he's suggesting, Sitinger, and I can work with the OpenSSF guys to kick it off, is we'll get an official mailing list and a cadence of meetings which are open to all the members, and start having those discussions with an open group here. So we can kick that off over the next couple weeks, and then I think it'd also be a great forum for folks who are interested to join us and answer. We can talk about additional things related to design.
Yep, perfect.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, that sounds good. Awesome. Thank you guys for presenting. That was definitely informative. So we have another proposal, this time from Jamie around component detection. Similar. So Jamie, do you have something you want to present, or you want to talk through it as well?
Yeah, I've got a short presentation if I can share my screen.
Absolutely. I will stop sharing, and the floor is yours.
Super, thank you very much. Just give me a second to pull up my slides here. Okay, it looks like it's showing on my end, so I'm just going to take it away. Yeah, my name is Jamie McGee, and I'm an engineer on the open source engineering team at Microsoft. Today, I'd like to give you a short introduction to component detection, followed by a quick demo. I'll finish up with some questions and answers with help from my colleague, Laura McLeod, who's a PM on the same team. So let's just jump into it. These days, a lot of engineers are asking, what dependencies does my code use? The question is becoming more and more important with the deadline of the executive order looming, and especially important over the past weekend as we're all finding out how popular Log4j is. This is the problem statement we set out to answer with component detection. Component detection is a software composition analysis tool. It's designed to be used at build time to determine all the dependencies pulled into a build. You can run it as a CLI tool or import it into your own project as a library. The output is a graph that shows the relationship between direct and transitive dependencies, including where they're used in your code base. To ensure this output is as accurate as possible, component detection directly uses package managers whenever available, as well as file parsing techniques to collect dependency metadata. This means that you can use the output to check against security vulnerability or open source license databases, or even as input to an sbom. With this in mind, I'd like to highlight 3 particular benefits that I think will be most relevant to you. First and foremost, for engineers, is that it's non-invasive and standalone. That means you don't need to write any new code or change any existing code. Component detection is written in .NET and can either be deployed as a self-contained app that is platform specific, or as a platform independent app that requires a .NET runtime to be available. It's also able to be run in air-gapped environments and needs no internet or database connection. So if you've got any special compliance requirements, component detection will still work. Right now, we support a wide range of ecosystems, and that equals broad user coverage. By supporting engineers with their existing tools, we can integrate into their workflows. And writing a new detector is easy as well. All you need is a pattern of files to look for, a parser to read your information. And component detection comes with all of the boilerplate code to help you get running quickly. Component detection is already widely used inside Microsoft for some of our most important products like Azure, Windows, and Xbox. It works at scale, at speed. Component detection currently runs in 500,000 builds per day, and 80% of those builds take less than 15 seconds. To date, we've detected 11.3 million uses of open source. That's a unique combination of package and version, of which 83,000 of those are unique. So now I've talked some about component detection. It's time to see it in action. I just need to reshare. Okay, so I'm now sharing a terminal, and I've got a small JavaScript project here. If I cat the package file, you can see I've got one dependency here on React scripts, and I'm going to go ahead and just run component detection. I'll start with help to show you what kind of options we've got. So we have scan, list detectors, help and version. Just run list detectors to show you, at the minute we have 16 detectors across a lot of different ecosystems. And we can also import your own custom detectors at runtime if you were to drop them into this plugins folder. So let me run help with scan to show you a little bit more information about the options we have on scanning. But the only flag that I'm going to use today is this source directory. So that's where our project is, and that's where component detection is going to scan. So I've started that running, and it's already completed. I've got a summary of the output here. So you can see it took about 1.6 seconds in total, and we detected around 1,500 NPM components. But like I said, the output is in a graph format, and if I want to view the full output, I can view this JSON file. And it's a lot of information, but if I search for the package log file, from our project. You can see that we have a graph here, and we've got a lot of components and their dependencies, both direct and transitive. So let me quit out of that and clear my terminal. I've also got a Docker file in here of a simple container based on Node, copy in our application and run it. I've already gone ahead and built this ahead of time, and I'm going to run the same scan, but also scan this Docker image too. And it's in my history, so I'm adding this other command line flag called Docker images to scan, and I'm passing in the reference. So let me go ahead and start that. We get a lot more information about the JavaScript project, and the Docker takes a little bit longer to run, but we should get the same output or a similar output. So you can see we detected 96 Linux components, and the total time was around 11 seconds. I'm going to take a look at that graph output again. I'm going to search for a component that I know is there. So I'm looking for apt, and you can see we detected version 2.2.4 of apt, and it's in a Debian 11 container. We've also got a bunch more information, like what layer it was detected in, and the reference for that as well. Let me quit out of that. Okay, so that was a quick demo of what component detection does. Let me just jump back to my slides. And yeah, that was component detection in a nutshell. Do you have any questions that Laura or I can answer?
This is Steve from the Deploy Hub. Does it record any of the source code that you're dependent upon, or is it only looking at the packages and libraries?
It only looks at the packages and libraries, but it also notes where in your code base those are found. So, it'll tell you exactly which package JSON or which pom.xml, for example, if you've got like a large project with multiple, multiple references.
Got it.
Yeah, I can see a hand from Abhishek.
Yes, I have some questions. So this is really great work. So one question on that, or maybe probably three questions on that front. First is, how is your transitive dependency coverage across these ecosystems? Like, I saw some of the code and saw it covered, but just want to recheck, like, is that good across all the ecosystems you targeted?
I don't think it's across all ecosystems we have perfect transitive dependency support, but I feel confident in saying most. Laura or anyone else in the call, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just kind of confirm what Jamie said, is that it's largely dependent on what the ecosystem supports, because again, we're using like the package manager in a lot of cases. So there are cases where transitive dependencies are not supported.
Can you give an example, like which ones?
I think Tio's on the call. Tio, if I say go, is that a wrong answer?
That's a bit of a gray answer because it's kind of shipping right now. I think a great example of an ecosystem where we don't have transitive dependencies would be Gradle. I was gonna send a link in the chat as well with a table kind of outlining what is supported and what isn't.
Okay, can this system, I think you mentioned this, but this can plug into any of the sbom generation tools easily, like using this information, right?
So I don't think that we've tried using it with sbom tools directly, but I can tell you that Microsoft is working on, I don't know what I want to say. It can be, inputs can be shared with an sbom tool in some cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm forgetting my other questions, but we'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can see a hand from Justin as well.
I was just going to say, like, I really appreciate y'all bringing this in. I think this is a common problem that we all sort of have, is that just determining software inventory is becoming a lot of work across all of the different package managers and what have you. And I, for one, would love to have us have a project in the OpenSSF that we can all kind of party on to go and have something we share for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was the intention, to find out if it's something that fits within the wheelhouse of the OpenSSF, and then to get an idea of what the requirements are for becoming a project, under the umbrella of the OpenSSF. So I hope this is the first step. Yeah, I see another hand from Steve.
Yeah, just another comment. This is going to, this would pair up perfectly with Persia, because Persia will be able to give us what we call the trust factor of each one of those packages. So being able to look through all the dependencies and come up with a trust score for your application will be key and very beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, I do see a lot of synergy between existing OpenSSF projects as well. Like, I haven't had a chance to read through your architecture documentation, but someone mentioned to me about scorecards, which seems like it would work well. Okay, I'm just checking the chat in case I've missed anything, but I think we're okay. Jeff, I can see a hand.
Yeah, this looks like a pretty complete tool. Do you have any future development plans or things that you'd be looking for getting community involvement in for being part of OpenSSF?
Yeah, I think I'll maybe defer that question to Laura, if that's okay.
Yeah, and hey, Jeff. So Jamie already mentioned detectors. We know, we have a set, the tool supports a set of detectors today. I think that's an area where if there's interest in other ecosystems, there'd be an awesome opportunity there to explore that more. I'll fully admit that the context that we're aware of with this tool today has been largely Microsoft centric in that ecosystem. Learning about other ecosystems, partnering, in ways to make it, if it can be helpful in different tools, different places, I think that there's a lot of opportunities there as well. I guess I'm mostly just echoing Jamie of we just wanted to see how we can help and what sort of opportunities exist, and be part of discussions from there.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can tell you today we have a contribution to add support for the Python package manager Poetry, if anyone is familiar with that. So right now we have support for pip, and I guess Poetry is coming soon because we have a contribution on our repo. Okay, Abhishek, I'm just going to check in. Do you remember what the third question was? I don't want to miss you.
I think I remember at least some of them. One was actually, do you also capture source hashes? Like, I saw you capture the versions as part of transitive dependencies. Do you capture the commit level information or things like that? Could be useful for at least open source things.
I don't think so. I think we rely, very heavily on package manager information. So just to take an example, I know NPM doesn't provide this sort of information, but I can't speak for other detectors. I don't know, Tio, do you have any more?
Yeah, I was just about to jump in. Some of them do support commit level references. For example, Go and pip as well, both support detecting components and saying, you know, it came from this Git repository with this commit tag. So yes, we do support that.
So if I can summarize, so if the package manager provides it, then you provide it on.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So we wouldn't figure it out on our own, but absolutely, if it'll be mentioned in a Go sum or Go mod, we'll pick it up.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Sounds like there's general support from the comments from everyone. Seems like this is a good fit within OpenSSF, and now it's just kind of the other presentation, now going through the formality of, you know, hosting the meetings, getting people involved, all that, and we'll kind of circle back and talk about the TAC when you guys are ready. But any other questions or comments for Jamie regarding component detection? Sweet. All right. Yeah. Thank you both for that today.
Thank you.
It was definitely cool to see all this work happening. So I think, David, you had a agenda item that you added regarding the great MFA distribution. You want to provide an update for us there?
Yes, and thanks for letting me slip that in. So I just want to give people a quick heads up. That Google and GitHub had contributed some MFA tokens. Thank you both. We found out that the Google tokens in particular, for various reasons, that expires at the end of December, so we've been rushing to get those distributed out there. And you know what, it's good to give us a kick to hurry up anyway and get some specific things accomplished. So we've gotten most of the projects we identified a critical list. We've gotten most of them notified. We are currently in the process of finding out which projects that want them, which ones don't, how many, and trying to get that information out. It's kind of been a rush. It's all, trying to get this done at the end of the year, but I actually hope that this is going to actually work out, and it's going to be a good, quick win, which I think is a helpful thing. And that's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, David. Looking forward to seeing those go out. So Brian, you mentioned that you have a couple items you want to throw in.
Quickly on the TSC composition, I did, while we were sitting here, quickly go through the minutes from previous governing boards and found from March of this year, agreement on the governing board to 3 being appointed by the governing board and 4 elected by the contributors. So have that in writing now, and we'll fix the charter to conform with that. And all will be hunky-dory on that front. It did also say, though, that terms would be for 2 years. That seems different from people's recollection. Perhaps there were alternating things. We'll get clarity on that. But I think the clear consensus is that all 7 will be appointed, elected. I'm sorry, over in the next election process. 3 by the governing board, 4 by the TSC. Any questions or comments further on that?
So are you going to have a rotating board then? So some of them will be 1 year, some will be 2 years, so you get a rotation.
So that actually was the initial intent. So we did have that, I think, back in January, if memory serves correctly, that we were going to do this rotation. And then over the past few weeks, month or two, that we've been discussing this, it's basically been, the consensus has been, we're just going to elect everybody this time, and that the need for overlap is actually less of a concern than we thought it was. Folks have basically gave their opinions that they've never really seen an issue, especially with the TAC the way it is right now. It's open, it's public, people are involved. Like, needing that overlap is not as necessary as we thought. So we decided to go ahead and just elect everybody.
Sounds good.
Okay. And the second item was on the log for JFront. I'm sure many of you are in fire drills now or looking at ways to affect that. Clearly, there's lots of things that we have going on at the OpenSSF, which, our hope is that they mitigate the chances of a future vulnerability like this, or when one is discovered through things like the vulnerability disclosure process, we could have even a more orderly rollout of fixes and that kind of thing. We've chosen not to do anything kind of big or whatever from the OpenSSF social or website point of view, just for fear of being seen as ambulance chasing on this front, to be frank. But we're looking at putting together something for January, for like the beginning when we all come back, that might talk about here's how projects like ours can help mitigate and efforts like ours can help mitigate the chances of future exploits, so future situations like this. So if you're wondering why we're being a little quiet now, it's just, we're not sure that there's much we have to add to the fray and distract people from the update work that I've no doubt many people are doing. Just wanted to make sure that was something that all of you kind of agreed with or had any thoughts on things we could do or should do to respond to. We didn't feel like we needed to add to the noise. Was ultimately where I'm at least. Open to comments on that.
I mean, I just say one thing in general is the the huge crisis and situation kind of underscores the need for the work which we're doing as a foundation. So if nothing else, it's validating the work that we're already doing.
For sure. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Brian. So we have 3 minutes left. I just want to mention really quick, the 28th, the meeting on the 28th, we're going to go ahead and cancel unless there's an objection from anyone here, but I think everybody's going to be out during that time. So we'll go ahead and cancel that meeting. So then the next meeting that we'll have here, I believe, is on the 11th of January. But we'll definitely have emails going out before then, asynchronously working on the election. So we'll get that self-nomination going out for candidates for the TAC, and then we'll start working on the election before that meeting happens. But with 3 minutes left, anybody have other items they want to bring up? All right. Well, with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, and those of you that are taking breaks, please enjoy. And we will see you after the first of the year.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye. Bye.
Everyone.